Okay. Okay. We're up to 5 trustees now. We have a quorum.
Yeah, good evening, all.
Hi, Mac.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi there, Mac.
Good.
Hi, Janae.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Hey, Jay.
Hi.
So you have Maurice there. Hello, Maurice.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Good, good. See Betty. Hi, Betty.
Hello?
Had to get you off mute.
He's having roof work done, Mac.
Yes, I see.
God, they're gone.
I see. Dr. Gorman is there. Hi, Dr. Gorman.
Okay, 2 more.
Good evening.
Hello.
How you doing, Eric?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Jeff Sattler sent me a text a few minutes ago, and he and I were both at a funeral earlier, and so he said he was going to be a little bit late.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Nanette, it's Vicki Krause. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, because I'm having trouble with the audio on the computer.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yes. So we have a quorum, Vicki.
I'm worried that I'm that feedback. So let's get started. If we have a quorum, Nanette, can we call the meeting to order?
Yes. Vicki Krause,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Eric Hagopian. Eric, I see you. You're muted, but I see you.
I'm here.
Okay, Bill Johnson,
Here.
Maurice Lindsay,
I'm here.
Janae McDonald,
Present.
Jeff Sattler, and Max Stark.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I know we have a full agenda tonight. We've allocated 15 minutes for each presentation, and I'm suggesting that we would leave the questions until each presentation has been completed, so we have sufficient time for trustee discussion. So Dr. Gorman, if you'd like to begin.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I am gonna share my screen, but Nanette, I don't know if you as the host, if you can mute trustees Johnson and Krause who are on the phone, and it might just help with some of the feedback. I think you should be able to do that as the host. Please don't take it personally.
No. Where are they?
Call from name unavailable. Call from name unavailable.
I think we're all set. You should be able to see my screen. So nods are good if you can see my screen. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so good evening to all the trustees of this ad hoc committee. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that this conversation would not be ongoing if it weren't for the advocacy of faculty and staff, along with the willingness of the board to hear from all stakeholders. Thank you for recognizing the importance of having the faculty voice included in this discussion. My objectives for tonight's presentation are to urge this committee to restore programs while highlighting the need for the trustees to be engaged in long-term decisions in order to safeguard STC's viability. We heard the trustees' comments during the last meeting regarding how eager you are to determine the ways you can restore programs that have been discontinued. I'm confident that the information I will share with you this evening will highlight strategies that hold promise for a prudent and rapid resolution. I would like to begin with providing you with some necessary background information. There are several overarching concerns that affect the discontinued programs, as well as indirectly affecting the remaining campus community. STC is an expensive institution to operate, not a surprise to anyone on this call, not only because of the historic site we're housed on, but also because of the struggle the college has in meeting the costs of offering highly technical, specialized programs in the STEM and health fields. Now it's not going to cooperate. I have too many computers. In the 2007 study previously cited by Dr. Cook, VP Keller notes, the highly specialized programs of the institution is what distinguishes STC from other community colleges in the Massachusetts system and are what defines STC as the technical community college. The carrying costs, infrastructure, and facility needs are not new since March 2020. Why then the urgency to cut programs without first discussing alternate solutions with faculty or the Board of Trustees? Furthermore, those burdens are now disseminated among the remaining programs on campus. The pandemic continues to be blamed for putting our college in a difficult financial position. However, a review of the facts indicates that this matter has been overstated. In the May 2020 executive summary, it was reported our college was at a 2% increase in actual year-over-year credits, and barring any catastrophes, STC would finish fiscal year 2020 with a balanced budget. Enrollment decline was already forecast to be down by 10% before the pandemic. Despite this anticipated enrollment decline, the February 2019 President's Perspective reported being engaged in visualizing an opportunity for change and growth. It has been mentioned during several meetings that there is a surplus of over $3 million that is expected to be put into reserves. However, at the Ways and Means meeting held last week, it was stated that the money could be utilized to assist in restoring the canceled programs. Last week, Amendment 52 of Consolidated Group A that included language that funds which are appropriated to the colleges would be contingent on the cessation of layoffs and furloughs, and include a plan to reinstate employees who have been laid off, and along with programs that have been eliminated on or after July 1st, passed in the State House. All three versions of the budget, the governor's, House, and Senate, have STC's 2021 budget of almost $28 million. There are specific, unique issues surrounding each program. However, there was one that was universal: the community support and outcry when the announcement of program closures was made. I'm confident that none of you need to be reminded of the letters, petitions, phone calls, and media releases that highlighted the concerns in the community regarding the decision to close several programs that have been at the heart of the institution for years. But now I would like to take this opportunity to review some of the specific program concerns and provide perspective on how the programs could be restored. Regarding automotive, one of the reasons we were confused about how this decision was rationalized regarding the deferred maintenance cost was because this building also houses significant heating and electrical infrastructure that has already cost upwards of $20 million. Therefore, one would imagine that this building needs to be maintained in some capacity. The program review data that had previously been presented as the space being woefully inadequate was in reference to expanding the program to double or triple the size, not its then current status. This program is unique in Western Mass because it is a more economical option for students than some of the for-profit institutions that can cost upwards of 5 times more than STIC. There have already been investments made in the program of several $1,000s that to date hadn't been utilized. The Professional Advisory Board recognized the current fleet, including 2 hybrid vehicles for the program, to be more than sufficient. The program's curriculum was more than capable of meeting graduate expectations without an immediate expensive investment. Program faculty had presented a plan to the interim dean of STEM on how best to maintain social distancing regulations and requirements, and were prepared to continue providing the necessary instruction while adhering to standards. Additionally, there continues to be a market demand for automotive technicians, evidenced by over 1,000 job postings for Massachusetts on Indeed.com. Civil engineering has more longevity with the college than architecture and building technology. The department chair at the time the program closure was announced had been in the position for less than 1 year. Her appointment as chair was a direct request from the VP of Academic Affairs in order to rejuvenate the program and revamp the curriculum so that there would be no overlap with ABT. The faculty of the program worked extremely hard to achieve this goal and were then subsequently rewarded with the program being closed without the opportunity to implement the changes. This program is also one of several that when faculty requested to develop marketing strategies and plans, the requests were ignored. There are definitely some obstacles with bringing cosmetology back to STIC, with the expensive enabling move out of Building 20 being one of them. However, the current timeline to transition all of the programs out of Building 20 is at least 2 years away, allowing for a significant amount of time to find solutions to this problem. The program review for Cosmo included plans to have an evening barbering program with adjunct faculty and advanced certificates to be offered in workforce development in order to offset some of the costs associated with the move. This is a unique program in Western Mass because it is one of 2 that accepts financial aid and also provides a significant amount of community outreach opportunities for students that aren't offered elsewhere. Cosmetology continues to be a field with continued demand, and faculty acknowledged that there was an 8% anticipated growth over the next few years. This program was anticipated to be fully enrolled for fall 2020, and faculty were taking the necessary steps to follow social distancing regulations. Dental assisting was the only direct patient care program targeted, mainly because the faculty are some of the most experienced on campus and therefore some of the most expensive. They had successfully met accreditation last year and enrollment was on target with the national average. The program was already in the planning stages of moving out of Building 20 and were thinking ahead to how they could use the space more efficiently with dental hygiene in order to mitigate costs. Faculty were actively enrolled in the development courses for transitioning to online education when the program closure was announced. COVID-19 has obviously affected the delivery of the skills required in dental assisting, further highlighting that individuals applying for any of the over 500 jobs listed on Indeed.com must be educated in the appropriate health guidelines. This education would be best completed by the experienced faculty associated with the program. The landscape program has generated over $52,000 in cash through its program activities. Since 2016, it has saved the college over $40,000 in material and labor costs while performing landscape improvement activities at the request of campus facilities. The program review for landscape reported that 2 exploratory committees examined the feasibility of including cannabis and urban farming into the current curriculum. It was determined by those studies that the costs would be too great and that these subjects would more appropriately align as a workforce development initiative. The 2019 program review conducted by faculty did include a suggestion for more feasible hydroponics component to be added to the horticultural curriculum, with the willingness of the faculty to assist in the development of the course offerings. A recent internet job search conducted last week had over 341 job openings during the time of year when the industry is preparing for winter. In the spring, the number of job postings could potentially be 3 times greater than that number. biotechnology, and biomedical engineering technology were some of the youngest programs to be discontinued, beginning in 2018 with a grant from Massachusetts Life Science Center. I'm sure you all recognize that in the current global pandemic situation, where the utilization and necessity of biomedical equipment, like ventilators, the field has the potential to grow exponentially. As I have stated in my letters to the Board of Trustees and my presentation in August, there is a need for transparent communication among the stakeholders. While we have waited to hear Dr. Cook report how he came to the decision that these 7 programs should be discontinued, we maintain that he has been working on targeting programs he has considered dispensable since he arrived at our campus. To review the memo shared with the committee and shared governance leadership last week, waiting until 2022 to consider restoring the programs to stick would place them at an even greater disadvantage. This would eliminate potentially 3 cohorts from having access to the programs and further impede the momentum of enrollment that some of the programs were expecting. Continuing to delay the return of these programs greatly increases prospects of their permanent demise. Dr. Cook continues to indicate that he hasn't heard from faculty about how we can move forward. He neglects to mention that he has the faculty's words in front of him in the form of the program reviews. Unfortunately, he selectively presents information from the reviews to offer support for his decisions, but fails to share that those same reviews offered strategies to move each of the programs forward. Program reviews are intended to facilitate a transparent conversation around growth and improvement and should not be used to justify program closures, particularly without consulting the authors of those reviews when there are questions about program viability. While you are considering the best route by which programs may be restored, I recognize this is apt to be a process that will require several meetings. I would like you to take a moment to consider VP Keller's words, again from 2007, regarding the negative impact that cost-saving strategies in one area may have. Additionally, there are ongoing concerns faculty and staff have on the continued poor management of the college under Dr. Cook's leadership. 3 years ago, the college body created a bill of particulars when we had questions about decision-making and operations, along with the perception of a lack of trust with administration. Just as troubling as that bill of particulars and the recent memo is evidence supporting the argument that when faculty do not meet the request of the president, even when data supports the faculty's position, they court a very real risk of punitive action, including termination or retrenchment. One retrenched faculty member said that they were replaced as a program chair because Dr. Cook said, and I quote, "I want someone there who will do what I want." Another example of when employees question the decision-making strategies of administration was the retrenchment of a tenured professor, one that was not affiliated with a discontinued program. Joris Topier was a tenured physics professor and also the faculty co-chair of the All-Unit Congress. The unusual circumstances surrounding Professor Topier's retrenchment have invited widespread suspicion of retaliation. He openly questioned decisions by administration, made the membership of the AUC aware of the content of his meetings with administration, and represented a majority opinion, one that was again expressed by the AUC membership in August. Most recently, when discussing his retrenchment as being a loss for the college, his former dean supported the decision with, and I quote, "What do you mean? He didn't get along with me." It is fair to say that Professor Topier's retrenchment created significant difficulties for the AUC, a group that is needed for STCC's continued accreditation. Rather than taking months to decide to restore programs, we have an instance in which the position of a single individual could be restored before the start of spring classes. Given the number of employees Joris represented as the faculty co-chair, this is a matter of intense interest to a large segment of the campus community. I would like to thank you for being engaged in this conversation since June. I can appreciate that while we are facing a surge of COVID cases in the area, entering a holiday season when we should be with extended family and friends, it is challenging to remain engaged in a difficult conversation around retrenchments and program closures. But we have to remember, we are here advocating for students, programs, faculty, and community stakeholders who were devastated by these decisions. Despite these circumstances, we all possess a great pride in our institution. The faculty and staff are devoted to the students, continue to strive for the excellence that the community has come to expect, and ultimately wish only the best for our community's college. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
This is Eric Hagopian. You did a fabulous job of presenting, your case there, and I don't have any particular questions, but we do appreciate the dialogue very much, the extended, really what we asked for the last time.
Thank you, and I appreciate being involved in the conversation.
Great. Nanette, Nanette, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh.
I think
So
muted.
if there are
I
no-
unmuted.
Sorry, if there are no further questions at this time then for Dr. Gorman, I think we should probably transition to Dr. Cook's presentation.
Could I just ask though, Trustee Kraus, do you want me to stay on the call or do you want me to leave?
Could you stay on the call, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Happy to jump in, everybody. Good evening. Before reviewing particulars in response to the ad hoc committee request for program recommendations, and you will have seen my memo provided in advance, I'd first like to offer a comment to trustees, given what has been a very difficult and uncertain time at the college. I particularly want trustees to know that I am listening. I take to heart your statements about process and a deep commitment to how and when decisions occur. I also appreciate that you have been on the receiving end of some strong rhetoric regarding program decisions and how extremely hard it is for anyone, frankly, to be told something is wrong. I know you are committed to excellence at this college and to our mission of access, affordability, and offering unique in-demand programs. I also have no doubt that there is nothing perfect about my efforts, nor given the world we are living, that every action at STCC is without question, given pandemic circumstances and fiscal uncertainties. For example, we could have described actions as program suspensions, which is effectively the working approach we are taking. But program discontinuations or program cuts implies a finality that is not the case. And I take seriously your desire to develop, support, and fund solutions. Going forward, I also won't hesitate to seek an executive session with trustees to discuss collective bargaining. Listening in all corners of the college, I do hear from faculty and staff an earnest desire to contribute towards cost savings. I also know our faculty and staff are frustrated by limited resources. Marketing is one of those topics. I hear too, especially as we prepare ourselves for accreditation, questions and concerns about our mission and purpose. When STIC talks about being a technical institution, some liberal arts and social science programs and faculty have felt left out. When we talk about significant healthcare and manufacturing workforce demand in our region, some STEM and technical programs and faculty feel left out. Online is also one of those subjects that frustrates STIC faculty to no end. I hear them. Our faculty want to work with students in person, even as they worry about coronavirus exposure during this pandemic. Students and faculty alike have shared a deep yearning to return to our former ways. I've heard this in so many discussions over the past months. Please know that I will continue to listen, and in particular will redouble my efforts with the board to invest in academic programs and to further plan for how we address substantial infrastructure and capital needs. I hear your desire to contribute not only your time and with strategy, but also through financial support. So with that, I'll turn to the memo prepared in advance. I have shared this in advance as well with our shared governance bodies, leadership from the All Unit Congress, leadership from MCCC, and leadership from our AFSCME unions. I can certainly go through each program. There are certainly some particulars and program-specific considerations. I'm hoping you had a chance to review that in advance. You know, in the interest of time, what I would say is in order for us, particularly under pandemic conditions, to sort of restart, reposition, there are some significant asks in advance, and you see that in the form of certified studies, particularly for automotive and cosmetology, in order to continue to sort of push that boulder up the hill. Again, your financial support, whether it is through reserve requests or whether we can accommodate that in the existing budget, I think helps move us along. I would also offer this less as an editorial, but one to just be sure that it's clear. Again, depending on if you want to go program by program, these types of investments, and you clearly see millions of dollars worth of need, are exactly what is needed, frankly, for our faculty and our students. This isn't an effort to sort of go above and beyond. This really makes sure that we are meeting industry needs. And so I think that really frames a significant portion of what I had anticipated that we would talk about, is the need to invest in some of the maintenance on these buildings. And again, these numbers have really been attempted to be dialed in and tightened, working closely with our Senior Director of Facilities and with our administration finance staff. So again, I don't want to belabor the sort of prelude to the discussion. I'm happy to go program specific and particularly in operation order of magnitude.
Yeah, Dr. Cook, this is Trustee Stark. So I guess overall, you know, as I look through the detail, I was more expecting, you know, to see, you know, the cost per each program, you know, so, you know, what does it cost us for faculty? What does it cost, you know, for a year or even a semester? So I guess this is a little, the approach that was taken here is a little off of that. But so I guess I just like you to explain a little more in terms of kind of the approach that you were taking to provide this detail, because this seems to be more about buildings than it does about programs.
Yeah, it's a great question, Mac. In some ways, what we find is we have to address the buildings in order to address the viability of some of these programs. What we've provided already is that information that you asked. What was the margin on operations and faculty, right? So we've got that broken out by each of these different programs that we have provided ways and means, and then that worked its way up through the full board. So for example, take automotive, we've got that breakdown, full and part-time faculty. Again, this is, you know, pre-COVID in a recent fiscal year was about 184,000. We've got instructional costs, part-time budgets, 76,000. We sort of mapped all that out. So we know the margin pre-COVID for carrying automotive was a loss of 281,000. Again, we've shown that model. We've sort of mapped that, if you will, for trustees. What we have found, though, Mac, is given the condition of Building 25, in order for us to actually be in there in any meaningful way, we have to address the significant backlog of facilities and maintenance there. That there is a, dare I say, functional obsolescence to that building right now that has to be addressed in order to relaunch it. And that's, again, that's why you see the focus in particular on the facilities piece for a few of these programs. This is that impact of COVID, if you will, particularly because it's already hard enough with that lab component to socially distance, given how problematic the buildings are already.
Dr. Cook, this is Vicki Krause. Can you just clarify, because I was a little bit confused in the presentation, of the 7 programs, is it safe to say that your recommendation was to review further 4 of the programs, but not recommending the review or reinstatement of civil engineering, biotechnology, and biomedical technology? Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
So of the 4 programs, if we're not going to go through them specifically, but of the 4 programs then that you provided information and are making some potential recommendations for reconsideration, not until fiscal 2023, so the start of the school year, September 2022. I guess that I was shocked at the dollar amounts that were provided in this presentation as monies that have never, prior to this request, been, I think, a topic of discussion at Ways and Means or with the board about these programs and our ability to continue them forward. You know, there have been conversations around automotive, certainly, and the need for some updated technology and improving the fleet and those sorts of things. But a $7 million figure was something that I don't think any of us, and I'll only speak for myself, but I was never imagining that dollar amount being ascribed to this program. And if in fact it was the reality around automotive, then we should have been talking about discontinuing it long before the pandemic. And I would say the same for cosmetology. I remember in prior presentations about the cosmetology program, when there was discussion about moving it forward, a dollar amount, I think in the $750,000 range was discussed at several meetings about relocating the program and what would be necessary. And, you know, we're presented with a potential $2 million need for that program. And so these dollar amounts are just something that personally I was not anticipating in any fashion. And I wonder if these were the amounts that were part of your reasoning for discontinuing the programs, why those amounts had not ever been presented to Ways and Means or the board previously.
No, it's a great point, and I can tell you my shock continues as well. The dollar amounts are pretty stunning. You know, there's a few items in there. One is even just look at the certified study expenses at about 400,000 for automotive and about 380,000, and that's a live quote for cosmetology. It is staggering what it takes to move a capital project forward. What I also realized, and I'll sort of talk about cosmetology and automotive specifically, is just how elusive it has been to find a forum to be sure everyone is fully informed. What I came to find out to the committee is that cosmetology, that $1 million that we've talked about, and that we maybe had 300,000 that went into reserves last year based on not pursuing that, and 700,000 was clearly not the full cost. We hadn't really broken out what the study was going to cost. And you see, even the 1.55 million was a figure that we had for the full project. What we clearly had not mapped out was the timing of that because it would cross multiple fiscal years, we didn't show the full continuity of that. That's an area that we clearly have to improve. Let me talk about automotive. We have actually had that figure of $6 million. It's actually in the campus master plan. We've definitely talked about that, including a review of the 5-year facilities plan with Ways and Means. What we didn't do is really find the time to look at it programmatically. And specifically, I can tell you that there's another conversation we need to have about our HVAC and energy systems program, because that building has $8.5 million worth of deferred maintenance on it right now. So we definitely have to ramp up the degree of detail that we are sort of talking about across the college, trustees with administration. The third leg of that stool, though, is that when I started at the college, we did not have academic program review. So, and until Dr. DeBurley landed in 2018 and was able to launch that, we didn't have a forum to also talk with faculty about their programs and to get our hands around this. So that's why it feels new, or certainly feels like this is out of nowhere, is we were not really attending to our planning, forecasting needs, and certainly around these large dollar figures. So again, I'm right with you in terms of the sort of shock factor of some of these figures, but they are real. They are live numbers. That report on these figures just around building 25 comes from a DCAM inventory from 2017. So again, this is a sort of live picture that we have certainly attempted to discuss, but clearly not with the level of specificity that we are going to need to.
So I guess as a follow-up comment to that, I would say that we're all well aware of the amount of deferred maintenance on the college campus, and the need to sort of try to figure out how to address that either in moves or reserves. But we could really shut down every program if we let ourselves be, overwhelmed with the cost of operating on that campus, because there's millions of dollars of deferred maintenance in every building. And we're not going to close every program for that reason. And, I just, these numbers are staggering and surprising, and certainly not for those two programs anything that I would have anticipated. There's clearly smaller dollar amounts in the other two programs that I think you are still recommending reconsideration for. But you're still not suggesting that those would come back until fiscal 2023. And I'm not sure why that would be, that we would wait on dental assisting and the landscape program if in fact those dollar amounts are much smaller and appear to be more easily able to be addressed without large studies and large deferred maintenance and, physical moves. So I don't know if you want to comment around the timing of those recommendations for those two programs specifically.
A couple things to sort of nest, by the way. Again, the working principles here, right, we are structurally imbalanced. Our ability to sort of work within our operating budget has become harder and harder. And that next year in particular, depending on what kind of federal support or state support there is a big unknown for us. I want to actually put in context, as big as these numbers look, 7 million to underwrite a program that needs it. Don't forget, our signature School of Health is in a building that needs 70 million worth. We have to get out of building 20, and we have to do in the same time period here over the next 2 or 3 years. It is an imperative. And trying to manage our budget to allow for some flexibility is part of the principle right here. What we've seen in Ways and Means is that by making some of these difficult decisions, even cash flow itself has benefited from that. We are not nearly as tight. What I will offer to that point around state appropriation, miraculously, if we are in fact level funded with to the point made about $28 million, that million, we likely, as you see, have recommended in front of you, 912,000 worth that we can spend just this year alone, and on 2 studies that we have to have. So that $1 million can quickly get spent. The challenge is then the year after. Automotive has to have that $2.6 million worth of investment in priority 1 repairs on the building. Cosmetology is going to need that 1.55 million. So it's important that we are together open-eyed, not just what we spend this year if we are level funded with that, but also the next year. The challenge for higher ed, and we sort of walk through this, is it's hard to unwind a program. That's why we are clearly doing this teach out thing, but it also is hard to ramp it back up. And particularly given the circumstances we're facing, COVID makes you socially distance and the lab piece is hard to deliver, and you have to socially distance, and you combine that with these facilities issues. That's why it's hard for us to just turn a switch back on, by the way, to undo the program, right? Because again, we have upwards of 40 or 50 students that we're teaching out, but also if we turn the switch and allow any number of students to come back in, how can we accommodate them given the circumstances we're faced? That was this effort to try to get our hands around.
Dr. Cook, when were you made aware of these figures? You said you were just as shocked as we were. When were you made aware of these?
I mean, from the day I walked in, Mac, when I heard that we had, $300 million worth of campus, right? That was an eye opener. Then when we did the campus master plan, right, and we were talking with faculty, we sought with trustees, and we sought your endorsement, and we sort of mapped out a set of priorities. That's where I was seeing things like $6 million on the automotive program. I think the challenge is no one anticipated what a pandemic does to complicate and even exaggerate some of the decision-making that has to come from that. Again, we were sort of limping along, if you will, in some of these program areas. Didn't necessarily have a plan for how to address $6 million. In some ways, because we were trying to mature things in other areas like ensuring that we had comprehensive program review, trying to attend to the School of Health Building 20 priority, since that was top of the line. I think that's been why it seems like we didn't get to this in the way that we clearly needed to.
So is it your opinion that we'd be throwing good money after bad money by bringing back any of these 7?
Let me take automotive, Max, since that's the high mark, right, money-wise. I think this college should have an automotive program. I actually think even at that price tag, and even if structurally we can't support it in year 2023 or 2024 when it's the operations, right, that we should figure out a way to still deliver an automotive program. Like, I don't think it's throwing good money at bad in this specific example of automotive. I want us as a technical institution to have automotive, but I also need us to be open-eyed about how much it's going to cost to deliver something that meets the industry expectation.
Eric,
Dr.
I think you had a question or commentary.
I do. So we're teaching in that, let's just stay on automotive for a minute because, you know, you're talking about it, but we're teaching in that facility now, John? Or how are we dealing with that?
Yeah, the teach out status. I think we have, let's say, less than 10 students, Eric, that we're finishing off. That we took a breather this semester, but next spring they're going to be in that building.
And so what is it that is, I guess, causing us to feel that we have to spend all of that money now to facilitate continuing the continuation of that program? I mean, is it unsafe for the students?
I have to use the term, it's functionally obsolete. That we have newer, but the building itself is hugely problematic. Again,
well, but I guess I'm looking to find out, is it a safety issue or is it just a technology type issue?
There are definitely the mechanicals, air ventilation, heating and cooling, that are a significant price tag in part of this, and that need to be addressed. There also is.
Are they necessary though? I mean, is it something that I guess what I'm trying to say is it something that we can continue to work to continue to keep the program going and make incremental improvements in that facility? Or is it a situation where, for example, you know, the place is loaded with asbestos and it's falling off and, you know, and people have risk of ingesting it? In that case, of course, that's something that remediation needs to happen before anybody can inhabit that space. But if the space is inhabitable and it's not unsafe, can we make incremental improvements while we teach?
Right, important question. What I'm hearing from our facilities people and from our academic people is that it is so significant that we can't just continue to make do. That yes, there is some asbestos mitigation that has to happen, but also given the size of the, let's say, the repairs, you gotta evacuate yourself, given the scope of it, in order to get in there and do the repairs that are needed. And again, there is a can-do attitude. I've heard this from faculty and staff, like, just let us keep plugging along. But what happens is we bring in industry personnel, professionals, and they look around and say, you can't possibly be teaching in here, right? That it's outmoded. It's not just outdated, right? It's outmoded because of our inability to really deliver on what students need in order to thrive in that industry. Like, again, where the bar is really, really below where it needs to be.
I think that, you know, we're very fortunate in the sense that we have Trustee Johnson that probably could be very helpful in the conversation and perhaps, you know, offer some more guidance from an industry perspective. So, for example, does the program need to be, you know, ASE certified, you know, that kind of thing? I'd be interested to hear, Trustee Johnson, what you have to say on that subject.
All right. Thank you. I tried to make a comment before, but I was muted out of the conversation. If Dr. Gorman is still on the phone, I do have one question, or actually two questions. You do admit there is a 15% decrease in attendance to the college, correct? That's you're on board with that statement.
That's one of the questions directed at me.
Dr. Gorman.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, and definitely
Okay.
the pandemic has highlighted the decline in enrollment, and especially with having to use online as the primary mode of teaching right now. Not everybody is cut out for that, faculty and students alike.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And then my second question is, if it was not these 7 programs, what is your suggestion to close the gap in the operating budget of the college? What do you have for solution?
So while I recognize that the college is in a state of financial duress right now, my area of expertise is not the finances, and I think that the issue and why I wanted to participate in the conversation is because many of the faculty in those programs that were affected did not feel that they saw it coming, and I think it goes back to what Dr. Cook mentioned earlier. No one forecasted what could happen with a pandemic. No one could anticipate what could happen. But the idea, and to go back on what Trustee Krause was saying, is that if these 7 programs had such financial issues, then why wasn't a conversation happening before? So,
I thought it was, because I remember Dr. Cook mentioning that there was an extremely amount of money that needed to be put in the automotive. Maybe because I am involved in the automotive, but thank you, Dr. Gorman. You answered my question. To get back to the other comment about the automotive, you're probably not going to like what I have to say, but the automotive shops, at least the progressive ones, the bigger ones, we are willing to train employees now. 20 years ago, that would not happen. 10 years ago, it would not happen. Because if Tom left, we'd hire Tim. If Tim left, we'd hire Tyler. There's plenty of people out there and to get a job. Now, in the automotive industry, whether it's the automotive, the body shop, we're willing to train. And I've had ads out there, and I can't find anybody that wants to work. Anybody that wants to learn the trade. And the new car manufacturers, they have programs. I know new car dealers have programs for trainees. So there is something to fill the void. And I believe we only had 15 people graduate last year. And I asked, I forget the gentleman's name, but the one heading up the program, if he could tell me how many people went into the trade, and he couldn't really tell me. And I asked him to send me some people I could place, and he didn't send me anybody that I could place with anybody. So yes, it's sad to see programs go, but tough decisions had to be made. And if we weren't complaining about these 7 programs being cut, we'd be complaining about 5 different programs or 6 different programs or 8 different programs. Sometimes, how can I say this? Sometimes a bad decision is better than no decision. At least we can go back, and if we find out that one of these programs really, really needs to come back, we can come back, as Dr. Cook said, in a year or 2. But if the college isn't around or fails financially, they're all gone. So that's my 2 cents anyway. So I'll turn it back over. I've taken enough time.
Does anybody have anyone else have any questions specifically on the information presented either by Dr. Gorman or Dr. Cook?
I have a question. This is Trustee Lindsay. Just for Dr. Cook, are there in the master plan, and I know you have one, is there anything that you identify there looking forward to any kind of solutions, not a ban, rather than these entire issues, rather than putting a Band-Aid on it, something that's going to provide some more permanent solution going forward? in terms of facilities. I know that we've talked in the past about Building 20, for example, moving to the tech park, but some of those other buildings like 25 and some of the other ones, facilities that house these programs, are there any other specific solutions that you foresee going forward that can provide some kind of permanent solutions to some of these issues regarding facilities?
I appreciate that question. I really hope that if there was one that you would know about it, that I would have been able to share that. And again, I think back to the highest priority area, right, which is our School of Health in Building 20. We have been working intently and intensely with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, both the executive branch, the legislature, and with DCAM, the state agency, for 3+ years now on a solution. And we break all of their models. When they look for on-campus solutions for these programs, they come up with 2 and 3 times the cost of this current tech park option. That's how problematic STIC is. And we can walk it all the way back to its founding. When you were given the Armory, as much as I applaud and relish the fact that this group of individuals saw fit to turn it into a technical institution, they didn't necessarily provide an endowment to address the types of buildings that we were inheriting. So we are left to try to make a go of this one way or the other. I wish it weren't so painful. I wish a pandemic didn't force our hand in some of these ways. I think you have found me to be absolutely intent on trying to be strategic, trying to ramp up our planning and our forecasting. But these are really big ticket problems that we have to face.
Dr. Cook, this is Betty. What is the total dollar amount? Different amounts have been thrown around for consultants to come in, and for which programs, and it sounds like it's a lot of money, and what are we getting for that if we went that way?
Yeah, we have found recently, Betty, that the use of an RFQ process, which is a request for quotes. Mind you, as a public, we are sort of required to pursue, in certain instances, a process to seek services. So the RFQ process puts a ceiling of $50,000 on these. And that's essentially what a lot of these consultancies would be, is a ceiling of $50,000. What we also know is we are at the mercy of that process. Take Value Stream, for example. Trustees approved use of reserves to bring in that consultant. The ceiling was $50,000. And, I think it served its purpose. It didn't do everything that we wanted. And I know that from trustees, some of the feedback was good that you made it work. But we can't also always just go in there and create the perfect consultant who's going to give us everything that we want and need. But again, that's likely what the ceiling will be on these types of consultancies. And we need that. I mean, there is a formality, of course, to these feasibility studies and these repositionings that are going to be invaluable.
So I thought something over $300,000 was mentioned.
Yes, sorry, those are for the certified studies of the structures themselves. That's a requirement by the state.
That's a must?
That's a requirement by the state, by DCAM, as a public, that anything over 300,000 as a capital project requires a certified study. And by the way, what we're seeing is the price tag for that study is more than the threshold requiring the study. I promise I can't make these things up. This is public higher education in Massachusetts.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're nearing 6 o'clock, and I want to try to be respectful to everyone's schedules. This has been really good discussion, and certainly want to take any further questions that anyone would have specifically on the presentations. But I'd like to suggest that we move the conversation on how we move forward. We've been presented with some details by both, Dr. Gorman and Dr. Cook. The dollar amounts, in 2 of the 7 instances are significant the other two programs, I believe that Dr. Cook is recommending for potential review and reinstatement, the dollar amounts are substantially less. And then there are 3 programs that are not being recommended to be reinstated. And I think we just need to figure out how we move forward if we choose to do so with the information that's been presented. I personally, again, was so shocked by the numbers that were provided here that I recommend that we seek some independent review of the programs and their reinstatement and the costs associated with doing that to make a decision as to whether or not we're interested in pursuing and recommending to the board some funding to reinstate any of these programs, some, all. I think that the numbers that are here are a little hard to digest. And I think following up on some of Eric's questions earlier, it just seems to me like it would be great that it was all perfect when we reinstated these programs, but it seems hard to believe that we couldn't reinstate automotive in some fashion for less than $7 million and cosmetology for less than $2 million. So I guess my recommendation would be that we consider an independent review of those programs and those costs.
That sounds like a pretty good idea. I like that idea, really.
Yeah, I'm on board as well. I was going to ask you, is that a motion?
So let me just check before you vote on that, the certified study is in effect, by the way, the formal way that Massachusetts requires us to address your question, right? If you want to know what's the actual cost to repair that, that's the avenue that we're obligated to utilize.
John,
I'm not suggesting the certified study. I'm not suggesting that I would recommend to Ways and Means or the board to spend upwards of almost $1 million to review this. I've got to believe that what we're talking about is an independent review of the program costs, not the associated deferred maintenance building costs, and whether or not we could truly bring back automotive in some fashion in the building that it's in or some other building on campus, and can cosmetology come back somehow without $1.5 million worth of expense. So I'm not recommending that we move forward with the certified studies of the buildings. I would like some independent review of the programmatic costs and bringing those programs back in some fashion.
This is Bill Johnson. If you're not going to look at the whole package, you're living in a fantasy world, because if you don't have a building, you don't have the equipment, you don't have a program. So you got to look at all the facets, not just one part of a program. You got to look at what the whole total costs are.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting we wouldn't look at the equipment and the curriculum. The equipment component, I don't believe, would be covered under the certified study of the building. That's much more of a DCAM bricks and mortar issue. So I think whoever would look at this would obviously have to address the equipment and the curriculum piece. But we could shut down the entire college if we want every building to be in perfect shape for our programs, because we know they aren't, and we know there's tens of millions of dollars of deferred maintenance, and we need to figure out how to deal with that to the best of our ability to continue to provide the academic curriculum and meet the mission of the college. So yes, would it be perfect if we had $7 million to spend on automotive? That would be great, but I don't know that it has to be a zero-sum game, that it's either perfect or nothing. And with these numbers, I just think we need an independent review of that, as to why we couldn't bring back some of these programs with lesser costs until the college is prepared to address them in a bigger way, whether it's part of moving Building 20 across the street, or if that is some component of these decisions. But that would be my recommendation, is some independent review of the costs associated with returning these programs, to be reinstated, and then if we had those numbers in a better sense, we could make some decisions around whether or not we recommended anything to the board with, with respect to specific funding. Unless somebody, has another position or wants to suggest bringing back some of the lower cost programs, or, that's just my point of view.
So just for clarification, before we got into this discussion, there was a potential motion to look at the cost of automotive and cosmetology and bringing those back and not the other programs.
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I guess that we've been presented with, information on the 7 programs. It appears that Dr. Cook is recommending at least the potential reinstatement of 4 of the 7. 2 of those 4 have some relatively insignificant costs associated with the reinstatement. So I don't know that we would have to really get an independent review of those, because the numbers seem to be very reasonable and not significant. But to me, in order to make a decision around cosmetology and automotive, I think we need an independent review just of those programs. Not that those would be the only ones we would bring back, but the numbers are so staggering that I think I don't feel like I can make a decision around those with what's been presented.
Okay, thank you.
My only concern at this point is that we've been talking about this for several months. We don't have a way forward. We all want very badly, and I think that the faculty, the administration, Dr. Cook, and the trustees all want very badly to do something to improve the situation. But we really, Vicki, we need you to help us to to guide us in the direction of a resolution. So I like the idea of an independent look at things. It perhaps might help. Sadly, we've got the faculty and the administration on different pages. Perhaps that would help to bring those in focus with one another. But I don't, I'd hate to see it take 6 months to make that happen. So anyway, I have a hard stop at 6. I have a dinner engagement that I have to get to, but those are my last comments.
So Eric, before you leave, are you in favor of moving forward on an independent study of these 2 specific programs because of the dollar amount of what's been presented? And once we had that, then we'd be in a better position to make a recommendation on any of the 7? Or are you saying we're kind of too late already and it's been too long and we should just let it be?
No, I'm definitely in favor of having an independent look at the 2 programs that we're talking about, or more if there are more that we need to look at. But I just don't want it to take another 6 months. I mean, this process, just everything. And I'm an independent guy. In business, I make the rules, you know what I mean? And
right.
I'm not used to things taking forever. I'm very impatient, which makes that's recipe for success in private business, but maybe perhaps not so much in the public world.
Right.
So
right. No, I agree with you. I think we've been talking about this for a long time. I guess what I would say is that under no circumstances is Dr. Cook making any recommendations to return anything anyway until fiscal 2023, which would be the 2022 academic year. So if it were to take us some short period of time to figure out at least the study on these 2 programs, hopefully we'd be in a position to be making recommendations, I don't know how long it would take. I'm not even sure who would do it, to be honest with you. But we could make some recommendations, in the early part of calendar 2021. But I don't.
In order for this to work, folks, the administration and the faculty have to be on the same page. I mean, we haven't discussed that elephant in the room, so we got to get everybody on the same page. And look, if it takes spending a little money and some time to have an independent look at things so that we can get on the same page, great. But we're spinning wheels here. One side is saying this, one side is saying that. We're trying to be the arbiter of something that we don't really even totally understand. So it's frustrating.
I agree. Any recommendation on how you would want to move forward?
Well, let me help, because there really are only two that I can think of, again, being at the mercy of the public process. We would use an RFQ, just like we did with Value Stream, and it sets the ceiling of $50,000, and we can set up the deliverables. Clearly, I can help make sure that the description and what have you meets your expectations, and then that allows us to actually approach specific, let's say, consulting companies or others to alert them to it. We still would be at the mercy of whether they chose to bid on that or not. And for only $50,000, again, we'll see what comes through. On the other hand, we can do an RFP process, a request for proposals. There is no ceiling on that cost, but we also can't then approach specific businesses or entities to alert them to it. We can only put that out there. And in the way that the process works in Massachusetts, you again are sort of at the mercy of who's willing to find that CBET and then bid on it.
And how long are you talking for that process to happen?
I mean, again, you've seen hopefully how responsive your administrators have been with this entire process. In a matter of a couple of weeks, I have no doubt that we could get an RFQ pulled together. Again, the painful piece that we all are aware of is how long it's going to take. We're going into the holidays. I will be at the mercy of whatever a consultant says their timeline could be. I mean, I can give you something back of the envelope to say we might be lucky to hear by March from them.
But in the meantime, we'll still have 4 students in the spring for a teach out, right?
Yes.
And so I'm just trying to understand, because if we're going to have students there anyway, and we're going to take all this time to do the study while we have students there operating in the building, while it may not be ideal, why are we going through this process? And then to just go into something else real quick, it's programs being pitted against programs. It's administration, versus what, everyone, it seems like everyone's being pitted against everyone. And I'm also concerned that us as a board, are we truly in this moment operating as a board? Or are we still entrusting too much of this process, to you as the president, where some of us are even in disagreement with the orders of operations that you took to get to this decision? So I'm just wondering, how much longer are we going to prolong this? There already are going to be students there for the teach out. And, I would like to see the board be able to operate as a board as far as it goes for these programs.
Yeah, points well taken. I mean, I would say this is right why you have a president is to manage the day-to-day and the operations. There is a significant amount that goes into a $50 million institution with hundreds and hundreds of employees. The 4 students in that lab, if we had an alternative, we would seek it, because it is less than ideal to have them back in there pursuing this teach out. As opposed to pulling the rug out, though, this is the best of a difficult situation. In an ideal situation, not pandemic, I would say, trustees, please join me in the automotive building so we can walk through, so you can actually feel and experience just how problematic that structure is for us. That's what I would do, but that's likely not a feasible way to try to go at this.
But Trustee Johnson said, I'll do the training at my place, but I can't find anybody to train. I mean, this is part of why I think we need somebody else to look at it. I mean, we need to have industry, we need to have the administration, the faculty, everybody has to be sort of interviewed in that study process. And it's got to happen in a timely fashion.
Maybe we're looking at this where we keep lumping them all together. And because automotive is going to take a different timeline, why are we holding up making a decision on other programs for automotive when we know how complicated it is now and how complicated it was prior to this? And so I think that, we can look at this and we can break things up a little bit. Like, why can't we push forward some other programs that aren't going to cost as much or have no cost associated with bringing them back, and continue with the study for automotive?
Yeah, the rationale on those, the sort of lower cost ones that don't necessarily have a facilities or a structural issue, is all about, remember, 2/3 of our budget is personnel. So at the end of the day, we're talking about somewhere between 8 and 10 full-time faculty positions here that have changed our budget position. And so when we sort of go back into that, essentially these are programs that they only can function if you have full-time faculty. And in this case, 1 or 2. But it also means that they're going to be teaching back again classes that average 5 or 6 students in them. That's again been part of the Achilles with this. I appreciate that there's a desire by all of us to show something, to do something, to come through. But if we seek to support the reinstatement of some of these smaller programs, we just go right back to this position where we have full-time faculty teaching very, very small classes, as opposed to some of the savings that does better help underwrite some of the other programs. I know it's a painful conversation.
It
But
is,
Dr.
I
Cook,
also
you're
think- Sorry,
I'm sorry,
Vicki.
but Dr. Cook, you're recommending in what you've proposed here that some of these programs be considered for reinstatement. So are you saying you're not recommending any for reinstatement? Like that, let's take dental assisting as a small dollar amount. Are you recommending that for reinstatement?
No, I'm recommending that for integration with dental hygiene, right? That's the narrative that you have for me, that we actually create a dental sciences program and that we
Okay.
marry that to the move across the street to the tech park.
So wouldn't we bring back the program and then determine a curriculum that would marry that as a dental science degree and then talk about how it moves across the street? Are you saying that we shouldn't bring it back until we make a decision about the tech park? I'm not sure. I mean, it seems to me like these smaller programs, following on Janae's comments, why couldn't we bring them back?
Right. So again, happy to talk program specific. Take dental assisting, right? The margin that we showed trustees, right, was a loss of 175,000 was about its functional loss each year. We don't have that in the structural deficit that we've been sort of working through. 15% decline this year, not sure what we can forecast next year. That's why we've had to look this way. The pause, also, Vicki, I definitely hear your question around delivery. There's 600 hours worth of lab and clinical that right now under pandemic circumstances don't allow us to just, again, flip the switch and welcome back dental assistant students.
But don't we have those clinicals for dental hygiene and all of our other health science programs? I mean, they all have clinical components that we're having to figure out how to manage around under the pandemic. And although this has gone on way longer than we anticipated, I don't think we're making decisions only on how we're being impacted by the pandemic, because we expect this is at some point going to go away and we're going to return to more normal conditions. So
No, I'll stay with you. Like, yes, some of these other health programs, just like dental assisting, right, are trying to figure out low density delivery of their lab piece. Absolutely, without a doubt. And it definitely has upped the logistics, right, of cleaning those spaces, adding more lab time because you have half the class size. All of that absolutely is being dealt with by other health programs. But there is the online component, the quote lecture piece. It takes months for faculty to convert into an online class. That's the one that is also harder. And as others have noted, very difficult for faculty who have never taught online to all of a sudden just go and create courses like that. That does not happen overnight.
But we're doing a teach out in dental assisting, aren't we?
We are, and we're just down to the clinical pieces. Again, that's the fundamental to this. Is really, again, it was hard to be proactive, but nevertheless, it has spared us some of that pain. But yes, we're just in dental assisting down to them finishing out their clinicals.
So I guess I'd like some feedback from the rest of the ad hoc committee members in terms of whether or not, I think Janae's perspective on, do we want to recommend bringing back some of these smaller programs right now while they get some additional review, and we then pursue a different plan of attack on the 2 higher cost programs in terms of automotive and cosmetology that are going to take longer? or how do folks want to proceed?
Trustee Stark, so I'm comfortable with that approach. I think some of these programs that aren't requiring that much investment are something that I'd like to, take another look at, certainly, but with leaning toward bringing them back and doing a deeper dive, a more independent, getting an independent assessment of the automotive and cosmetology programs.
Comments from others?
I'm in agreement with Mac. It's Betty. We're spinning wheels. Janae made a very good point that we've got to move forward, and we know that where the big money is, but there are some others that, yes, we could take a look and to go forward.
Okay. So do we want to make a motion that we will recommend to Ways and Means the reinstatement of all programs except cosmetology and automotive at this point in time, because those are going to need a more independent, deeper dive, and that we would recommend that these programs be reinstated with funds from the unrestricted endowment for fiscal 2022. So they would begin back up for the academic year 2021, 2022.
Yeah, I like the depth that you went through with that. So I call that a motion, and I would second that motion.
Can you do a roll call, Nanette?
Yes. Vicky Krause,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Eric Hagopian. He had to step out. Bill Johnson,
No.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Jeff Sadler is not. Mac Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
And do we want to then make a second motion that the two programs, automotive and cosmetology, require further review of the costs associated with reinstating and operating those programs, and that would be done through an independent review of the program costs to be, I don't know how to state this, but I guess whether it's an RFQ or an RFP would be issued for a consultant to be brought into those two for further assessment.
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Excuse me, maybe I'm the only one concerned about money. Are you going to put a money on there and say not to exceed a certain amount of money? Or are you just spending money we don't have? Not to exceed 20,000, not to exceed 30,000, not to exceed 10, or just as an open checkbook?
Yeah, I would say we get a sense from the industry on what it would cost, and then come back before we actually pull the trigger into agreement on a path forward. Yeah, right now we just don't know what it would cost us, so I think it'd be difficult for us to put a dollar limit on it.
So we would not embark on anything without bringing it to Ways and Means for
Correct.
approval.
Correct.
Mac, did you second the motion? I'm sorry, I lost track.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yes, I did.
Sorry, Nanette, can you do a roll call?
Yes, Vicky Krause,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
No.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Jeff Sadler, Max Starks.
Yes.
Great. So I think we're good for tonight. Thank you everyone for your time, and does someone want to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Annette?
Roll call. Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Elizabeth Bosito,
yes.
Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson.
This one's a yes. Have a good night.
Good night. Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler, Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.